The quarterly family dinner at Hillcrest Country Club had become Dad's comedy hour. Richard Moretti, real estate mogul, held court at the corner table overlooking the golf course, regaling his business associates with stories about his financially struggling daughter who kept asking for small loans. "Emma comes to us every few months, hat in hand," Dad said, gesturing with his wine glass toward where I sat quietly. 26 years old, still figuring out her career, always needs help with rent or car payments. The table erupted in knowing chuckles. These men understood the burden of supporting adult children who couldn't quite make it in the real world. "That's why we don't spoil them," chimed in Mr. Patterson, Dad's golfing partner. "Builds character." "Exactly," Mom agreed, her tennis bracelet catching the light as she reached for her champagne. "Though we do help Emma when she really needs it. Family is family." The help they were discussing included the $8,000 monthly transfers I'd been making to their personal accounts for the past 2 years. Money they believed came from my successful tech consulting business helping them through temporary cash flow issues. Money they spent on country club memberships, luxury cars, and frequent trips to Europe while telling everyone I was their financial dependent. "What's Emma doing for work these days?" asked Mrs. Wellington, Dad's business partner's wife, glancing at me with barely concealed pity. "Freelance tech consulting," Dad replied dismissively. "Computer stuff. Makes enough to get by, but you know how unstable that kind of work is." My unstable work consisted of advanced cybersecurity consulting for Fortune 500 companies and government contractors. What I told my family was basic website design was actually classified work that required top-secret clearance and generated substantial income. "The kids today expect everything handed to them," Mr. Patterson observed. "At least Emma asks for help instead of demanding it. She's learning valuable lessons about budgeting and responsibility," Mom added proudly. "Even if it means we have to assist her financially sometimes." The assistance had started innocently 2 years ago when Dad's real estate investments hit a rough patch and Mom's boutique wasn't generating enough revenue to cover their expenses. They'd been on the verge of losing their country club membership, selling the vacation home, and downgrading their lifestyle significantly. I'd offered to help temporarily, but Dad's pride wouldn't accept charity from his daughter who played with computers for a living. So I'd created a cover story about needing family loans for my business, then immediately transferred the money back to them plus additional funds for their expenses. "How much does Emma typically need?" Mrs. Wellington asked with concern. "Usually 3,000 to 5,000, Dad said, shaking his head sadly. "We've probably lent her 30,000 or 40,000 over the past couple years. Kids these days don't understand the value of money." I almost choked on my water. They'd lent me $0. I'd transferred over $190,000 to cover their mortgage, country club fees, car payments, and luxury expenses while they told their social circle I was constantly borrowing money I couldn't repay. "What about collateral?" Mrs. Wellington suggested. "My nephew had to sign over his car title when we helped him with business loans." Dad waved dismissively. "Emma doesn't have assets worth securing. Her apartment is rented, her car is leased. Everything's paycheck to paycheck. The apartment they thought I rented was actually a condo I owned outright. The car they thought was leased was a Tesla I'd purchased in cash. The paycheck-to-paycheck lifestyle was a carefully maintained facade. What they didn't know was that my accountant was Jonathan Liu, senior partner at one of the most prestigious wealth management firms in the Pacific Northwest." "Speaking of financial planning," Mrs. Wellington said, "how's your new venture going, Richard?" "The commercial development project." Dad's expression brightened. "Excellent. We just closed on another property last month. The Mediterranean Resort project is moving forward ahead of schedule." The Mediterranean Resort project was funded entirely by my monthly transfers, though Dad had no idea. "And Lisa's boutique is thriving," Mom added. "We're opening a second location next month." The second boutique location was also funded by my transfers. "You two have really turned things around," Mr. Patterson said admiringly. "Last year you were worried about the country club fees, and now you're expanding businesses and taking European vacations." "Hard work and smart planning," Dad replied modestly. "Though we're also blessed that Emma's financial requests have been smaller lately." My requests hadn't been smaller. I'd simply increased the transfer amounts while asking for smaller loan amounts to maintain the illusion that they were supporting me rather than the reverse. "Emma, dear," Mrs. Wellington called out to me, "How's your little computer business going?" "It's going well," I said carefully. "I've been working with some larger clients recently." "Wonderful," she replied with the tone people use when discussing a child's lemonade stand. "It's so nice that you're learning about entrepreneurship." "What Emma means," Dad clarified, "is she's gotten a few bigger freelance projects. But you know how contract work is, feast or famine." I excused myself from dinner early, claiming I had client work to finish. In reality, I needed to review some concerning communications from my accountant about offshore account reporting requirements and potential tax implications of my family financial support structure. That evening, Jonathan Liu called with urgent news. "Emma, we need to discuss your family assistance arrangements immediately. The IRS has been asking questions about unusual transaction patterns in accounts connected to your parents' social security numbers." "What kind of questions?" "Large cash deposits that don't correspond to their reported income sources. Luxury purchases that exceed their documented earnings. The spending patterns suggest undeclared income." "But I've been paying gift taxes on the transfers," I said. "You have, but your parents don't know the money is gifts. They think it's loans from you, which means they're not reporting it as income. Meanwhile, they're spending at levels that suggest much higher earnings than they're declaring." "So the IRS thinks they have unreported income?" "Exactly. And they're launching an investigation. They want a meeting tomorrow with documentation about all financial relationships between you and your family members over the past 3 years." The next morning, I sat in a sterile IRS office with Jonathan, facing Agent Maria Rodriguez and her team of investigators. Boxes of financial records covered the conference table. "Miss Moretti," Agent Rodriguez began, "we're investigating substantial income discrepancies for Richard and Lisa Moretti. Our analysis shows luxury spending patterns inconsistent with their reported earnings." She spread out bank statements and credit card records. Country club memberships, European vacations, luxury car purchases, commercial real estate investments. All funded by large cash deposits that don't match their business income. "The deposits come from my accounts," I said quietly. "Yes, we've traced the transactions. Can you explain the nature of these payments?" "Family financial assistance. I've been helping with their expenses." Agent Rodriguez looked surprised. "Our investigation suggests your parents have significant assets and business holdings. Why would they need financial assistance?" "They don't," I said. "They think they're lending money to me. I tell them I need loans, then transfer the money back plus additional funds to cover their actual expenses." The room went silent. "You're telling us that your parents believe they're supporting you financially, while you're actually funding their lifestyle?" Agent Rodriguez asked. "Correct." "How much money are we discussing?" Jonathan pulled out comprehensive records. "Approximately $190,000 over 24 months. Miss Moretti has been paying appropriate gift taxes, but her parents are unaware the money constitutes gifts rather than repaid loans. So they're not reporting this as income," Agent Rodriguez concluded. "They have no reason to believe it's income," I confirmed. "They think it's their money being returned from loans to their daughter." Agent Rodriguez reviewed the documentation. "Miss Moretti, your cybersecurity consulting business generates substantial income. Why hide this from your family?" "Because they refuse direct help. This arrangement preserves their dignity while keeping them financially stable." "But creates tax compliance issues," Agent Rodriguez noted. "Your parents are unknowingly committing tax fraud by not reporting income, while publicly claiming you're financially dependent on them. We need your parents to understand the actual source of their funding and file amended returns. This meeting could be enlightening for them." 3 hours later, my parents sat in the same conference room, looking confused and slightly offended by the IRS summons. "We don't understand why we're here," Dad said stiffly. "Our tax filings are completely accurate." Agent Rodriguez spread out the same financial records. "Mr. and Mrs. Moretti, our investigation shows income discrepancies between your reported earnings and your spending patterns." "That's impossible," Mom protested. "We track every penny." "These bank deposits," Agent Rodriguez continued, pointing to transaction records, "represent substantial unreported income." "Those aren't income," Dad said confidently. "Those are loan repayments from our daughter." Emma borrows money and pays it back. Agent Rodriguez looked at me. Miss Moretti, would you explain the actual arrangement to your parents? I took a deep breath. There are no loans. I've been transferring money to support your lifestyle while telling you I needed financial help. The room went dead silent. What? Mom whispered. The money you think I'm repaying comes from my cybersecurity consulting business. I earn between $400,000 and $500,000 annually. I've been funding your country club memberships, vacations, car payments, and business investments. Dad's face had gone white. But you said you needed rent money. Car payments. I own my apartment outright and paid cash for my car. I created the loan story because you wouldn't accept direct financial help. Agent Rodriguez intervened. Mr. and Mrs. Moretti, you've received approximately $190,000 in unreported income. You need to file amended tax returns and pay penalties. But we thought. Mom trailed off. You thought you were supporting your struggling daughter, Agent Rodriguez confirmed. Instead, she's been supporting your entire lifestyle. The tax implications were severe. Back taxes, penalties, and interest totaling nearly $60,000. The social implications were worse. They'd have to explain to their country club friends why their membership was suspended pending financial verification. Emma, Dad said quietly, why didn't you tell us? Because every time I tried to discuss my actual career, you dismissed it as computer stuff that couldn't generate real income. Your egos couldn't accept help from your daughter. But we've been telling everyone you're our charity case, Mom said, horrified. I know. While spending my money to maintain your social status. The IRS investigation concluded with my parents filing amended returns and establishing payment plans for their tax debt. The country club suspended their membership pending financial review. Their business associates learned the truth about who had actually been supporting whom. 6 months later, our relationship had completely restructured. They finally understood my actual career and income level. They appreciated the financial support I'd provided instead of resenting my fictional dependence on them. We owe you more than money, Dad said during our first honest conversation about finances. We owe you an apology for dismissing your success and creating a story that made you look unsuccessful. The family charity case had turned out to be the family provider. Their membership card stopped working, but our family relationships started working better than they ever had.